Today's topic is cactus gardening in cold weather climates, and our presenter is Julie Lay. Have you ever been curious about using cactus in cold weather climate landscaping? It may be easier than you think. In this session, Julie will lead you through many topics of growing cactus outdoors in cold weather climates, including anatomy of cacti, types of cacti appropriate for climate zones 4 to 6, soil requirements, watering, growing cacti from cuttings versus established or rooted plants, garden pests specific to cactus, flowers, fruit, and pruning, as well as placement of cacti in xeriscape landscapes. Julie brings over 10 years of experience growing over 100 varieties of cold-hardy cactus in landscaping, xeriscaping, here in the high desert in Central Oregon, Zone 4 to 6. Smith Rock Cactus Company has approximately 2 acres of demo cactus garden for the public to visit by appointment. At this point, I will turn things over to Julie and stop sharing. Okay, so Julie's going to click in and share her machine or her screen.
There we go. Welcome and hi for everybody here in Central Oregon especially, but from wherever location you are currently in. Welcome to Cactus Gardening in Cold Weather Climates. Oop, my screen is not going to advance again. I'm going to stop share and I'll come back.
Thank you, Julie, for letting us know what was going on.
Yeah.
And thanks.
We'll try it again here. Still not sharing. Okay.
Okay, it did share, but it's not advancing.
Right.
Okay, let's exit out.
Oh, there we go. There we go.
There we go.
Okay. It went.
Excellent.
All right. So my name is Julie Lay, and I am, our cactus garden is located adjacent to Smith Rock State Park in Terrebonne. I've been, like I said, growing cactus for over 10 years. And some of the cactus we have here on the property, we've had actually growing outside here in Central Oregon for 47 years. That's a long time. You can find us on our website at smithrockcactuscompany.com. We specialize in cactus growing conditions in zones 4 through 6 especially. And you can visit our cactus garden by appointment only, since it is here on our property where our house is. Sometimes we're not home. So please be sure to make an appointment before you drop by, because chances are we might not be here. Our business hours are 10 to 5. In the heat of the summer, if we have a heat wave, we open earlier in the morning, but I will announce that. And you can also find us on our Facebook page. Just search for Smith Rock Cactus Company and it will come up. I put a lot of announcements on Facebook. If you're not a Facebooker, be sure to check out Smith Rock Cactus Company at our website. So let's start first with some cactus anatomy. The first type of cactus we offer is a variety of prickly pear. Prickly pear can be small, compact growing, or it can be very large and sprawling, covering more than 6 feet across if you don't prune it regularly. Cactus need to be pruned regularly to keep them in tip-top condition. Prickly pear have pads, sometimes called paddles. You'll hear it mentioned the same way, and you can see in the black and white photo on the right-hand side here, the pads form big paddles. Some are more circular than others, but many are this oval or ovate shaped pad. There's also the cylindrical choias, and they have segments where the last ones had pads. You can see the cylinder-shaped segments here that form on the cholla plant. Another good grower for Central Oregon are hedgehogs, what are known as hedgehog cactus. And you'll see this one. This is one of our top bloomers here. From last year, that picture was taken, but you can see here in the black and white the stems that are formed, and they make clumps. They start as a single stem, and then over time they will form large clumps. The next variety is a pedicactus, which are the mountain ball varieties. We actually have some pedicactus that grow in Central Oregon, actually more toward the Sutton Mountains over by Mitchell, Painted Hills area. They will have these pedicactus mountain balls variety. Again, it makes a kind of a flat, roundish kind of stem that stays relatively low to the ground, and they will also clump given time. Pedicactus, however, do not like high heat. So when we have extreme temperatures over 100 degrees, I'll just say it now, you'll want to put on some sunshade over the top of them to protect them from the direct rays of the sun. They will take sun damage. Mountain ball cactus can even grow as high as 11,000 feet in the Rocky Mountains. So again, they like cold weather more than heat. Next, we have the ascorbias, which are considered the beehives. The beehives are great because they have these beautiful purple flowers that come out on them. And these flowers are much larger than a mountain ball. Again, their stems are these clumps. Looks like a whole bunch of beehives, basically. Next, the cactus flowers. All cactus flower. No matter what the type, they all produce flowers, which is awesome. And next we have the spines and the glochids. So let me talk about this a little bit. Here on the picture, you will see these little round spots. Those are called the areoles. Within the areole, you'll have the long spine that comes out from it. Some only have 1 to 2 spines. Some have 3 to 7 or 8 spines, depending upon the type of cactus. And then you have these very small hair-like spines. Those are called the glochids. Glochids are your enemy. I will tell you right now, they are your enemy. They break off very easily into the skin. We'll talk a little bit about how to avoid glochids a little bit later, but I just want you to know those parts of the anatomy of cactus plants. Next, we come to roots. I've uprooted this one as I was doing a transplant, so you can see the fine hair-like root system on a smaller cactus compared to a tubular root. You can see the tuber there, along with the hair-like spines that come off of it. As a plant matures, the spines will radiate out from the plant just like a bicycle spoke, and it'll go in all directions, and the roots only travel no more than 2 inches below the surface of the soil. They don't make a deep taproot, except for if you want to call a tuber a taproot. They don't form a big taproot. They just spread out underneath, and that helps them collect water easily, being adapted for deserts and dry climate. So let's move on to the cactus tools that you might use. Again, this is going to help you avoid painful encounters from the glockids. You can see them here in a finger, how they come off really easily versus spines that can poke into you. Both can be painful and irritating. Glockids make your skin feel like it's got a rash, I guess is the easiest way for me to tell you. It's just irritating and itchy more than anything. So we don't want you to come in contact with those spines. So how do we avoid the spines? First of all, do not invest in gloves for handling cactus. The spines and the glockids will go right through the leather. Even welding gloves are not a all-out indicator that it will avoid spines getting to your skin. So don't invest heavily in expensive gloves. It does not work. Once the spines enter the leather, you will never get the spines out, and you've ruined a nice pair of gloves. So avoid gloves. Instead, opt for something like salad or barbecue tongs to pick up or move cactus, pick up broken off pads, etc. Or you could try rolled up newspaper or carpet samples. And again, after you've used those things, except for the salad tongs, obviously, but if it's newspaper or carpet, throw it away after you're done. It's not worth saving. And you can still get spines through carpeting. My choice is what's called a hemostat. I often use a 12-inch hemostat for most things. I also have 16-inch hemostats that I use for getting within a cholla plant. If I need to reach something that's deeper in to the plant, I'll choose a longer hemostat. What's nice about hemostats is you can also, because they're a pointed end here, you can also get that down right into the plant wherever you are, and you can weed. So if you've got cheatgrass coming up or other kind of grass coming up in your cactus, you can use the hemostats to root that out. Salad tongs will not work for that, for weeding. So hemostat is the way to go. They're available easily on Amazon. And I also sell them here at cost at the Cactus Garden. So now let's take a look at soil requirements, because many people ask me about soil. How do you amend your soil to grow cactus? What's great is cactus love yucky soil. The poorer the soil, the better. The best is coarse sand with gravel and rock mixed in, which is perfect for here in Central Oregon because most of our soil is sandy. It's also volcanic soil. It has a lot of gravel. It has a lot of rock to it, lava rocks, etc. But you do want to avoid mulch or rich organic matter. Don't do it. Mulch and rich soil is too rich. It's too hot of a soil. It will hold the heat along with moisture, which can be a death sentence for cactus. So you don't want to do that. Another one that you want to avoid is any kind of bark chips or bark mulch as a covering over your cactus area. Again, the bark holds the moisture, which is not good. It induces rot. You also want to avoid fertilizing it. They don't need fertilizer if they're planted in the ground. The only fertilizer they would need is if you have a potted cactus plant, which doesn't, again, have much nutrient value once it's in a pot. But in the ground, they don't need fertilizers. I don't use any fertilizers here on the property for cactus at all. Top dressings. What I choose to use is crushed rock. And you can see it there in the background. It's that taffy colored rock that's from Grizzly Mountain. It's a rhyolite covering. But you can use any type of crushed rock, that's fine. You could use river rock, which are like the cobbles, or you could use even pea gravel. But again, avoid that bark mulch for covering. Well, let's take a look next at wintering. We've just come out of the winter months, even though some days it feels like winter's not going to let go of its grip very well. But cactus in the winter months, what do we need to expect? And you can see here in the picture, this is a cholla, and you can see the hoarfrost that was from this last winter when we had some great hoarfrost. I think it was in January. I can't remember exactly which month it was. And the cactus are looking fine. They're just covered in frost, so no problem there. But cactus all go through cellular changes in the winter. They shed excess water from their cells to prevent freeze damage, causing them to lose their plumpness, and they take on a wrinkled appearance. And you can see that it looks like this poor cactus needs some face cream or some night cream because they're very wrinkly. But that's just because they have lost all of the, or most of the moisture out of their cells. That way they protect themselves from freeze damage. They may look like they're dying, but they're not. They're still well alive. They're just in dormancy. As they shed that excess water from their cells, they lose the ability to stand erect and they, quote, lay down. So if you see a cactus that looks like this one here, this is a beaver tail from this last winter, it was pretty much flat against the ground instead of standing upright. That's, again, it's okay. Check the color of the pads. They're still green. This center part right here is kind of an off color just because it was in the center of the plant, and you notice it more when it's laying down. But everything is still good. They're wrinkly, but they're laying down, almost like pancakes stacked up. On chollas, you'll see how the stems are no longer standing erect. They have bent over at the tops. Again, that is okay. That is a normal process because they've lost the moisture from their cells. They're protecting themselves. Some cactus will actually change color. This is a stress indicator based on either cold or lack of water. But in this case, in the high desert, it's going to be cold. And they can change from green to taking on purples or red tones to their skin. Again, it's like their natural antifreeze. It's a process they go through. Not all cactus will turn purple or red in the winter. And here's one that's gotten a lot more reddish purple, and that's on a cholla plant. Again, some will do it, some won't. Pads are segments that take on a brown or black appearance. See that darkening color right there? If you touch it, you feel it with your hemostats, you'll notice that it is soft and squishy. That is signs of rot. It is time to cut that pad away from your plant. Remove it immediately, because you don't want the rot spreading to the rest of the plant. This happens, it's normal. And I've cut out multiple pads out of plants over the winter months for this very reason. Matter of fact, this pad in the picture was one that I cut off the plant. And snow. People will think, oh, I need to remove the snow from my cactus so it doesn't damage it. No, leave the snow. Snow acts like a great insulator in the cold. Think of being in an igloo in the Arctic. Same idea. It's an insulator. It helps protect the plant. So oftentimes in Central Oregon, we'll have a snow event and then our temperatures will plummet. This last winter here at the house, we got down to 0, I think was our lowest temperature this last winter. And that's fine. They will do just fine underneath the snow. No worries about having to remove snow from around or on top of your cactus plants. So let's move on now to water and growth of cactus. Once established, cactus need very little water. They're great for xeriscaping. If you are thinking about removing parts of your lawn or other areas because it's taking too much water, then cactus might be a good option. Do know, though, that they do need some regular watering during the hot summer months. This will promote good root growth, and you'll also get a much better bloom cycle from your cactus if you do water. How often? Approximately every 2 to 3 weeks. Give them a good soaking. Remember, they don't have a deep tap root. Their roots, especially like on this cactus here, which is a fairly, it's about 5 to 6 foot spread. It's hard to tell in this picture. But those roots will actually go out beyond this cactus on all directions. So water across everything. And when you do water, water first thing in the morning or late in the evening. Don't water midday when the sun rays are directly overhead, or you can sunburn your plant. So if you think about that, if they're in the desert of Arizona and they're getting rainwater during the monsoon months and the summer months, it's going to be cloudy during that rainstorm. They're not going to be in direct sunlight. So just think of that. Give them a good monsoon bath first thing in the morning or late in the evening. Stop any additional watering in early September, as plants need to begin the transition to dormancy. So you can see this plant. This was taken in mid-September-ish, and you can start to see the purple edges coming out where it was all green before. It's starting the transition. You don't need to water anymore from September until March at the earliest here in Central Oregon, if the plant is outside. When you do begin watering, usually I begin mid-April. I actually started a little earlier this year, but by mid-April, when you start to notice the cactus plumping up, the cholla stems are not drooping over anymore, the prickly pears are starting to be more erect, etc., you may start to notice these little red spots appearing on the cactus. Woohoo, that's new growth, or it could be what will become buds, flower buds. This marks the new growth. That's when you start watering. As the growth progresses, the red spots become buds, or it could become segments or new pads. But at this point, you can't tell what is what. They still have not been developed enough to tell which is what. But as time progresses, you'll start to notice the difference. Do you see the conical shape here? That's going to be a flower bud, where a flat piece like this will become a new pad or a new segment. So let's take a look next of placement of cactus in your landscaping. How do you know how close to put them together? Live and learn. I found out the hard way. First of all, when you're putting cactus in landscaping, keep in mind that cacti do not like their feet wet. In other words, they don't like wet roots sitting in water. So if you have an area that naturally pools water, don't place a cactus there because it stays too wet. Even in the winter, it stays too wet. Avoid those low spots. Consider planting cacti in berms or raised areas instead to assist with increased water drainage. So at our first cactus garden area at our house was in the backyard, and we made berms we had removed all of our lawn, and we used the lawn as the part of the berm. And then I covered that with sand, and then I used fabric or weed cloth, and then I planted the cactus. And then we made a walkway through everything, so it simulated a dry riverbed, just as something intriguing and interesting. But we planted in berms, and again, that helps with that drainage. Space your plants 3 to 4 feet apart, if not further. So this was an area that I planted last early September. So it's very, very sparse looking compared to what you can see here at the edge from what had been planted 2 years ago. But I planted all of this, and you can see how sparse that looked last fall. This year, those plants will grow tremendously, and that will fill in so it doesn't look so sparse. But be sure to plant 3 to 4 feet apart. Don't do what I did, which was I planted everything way too close, and then I paid for it later because then I can't get into weed and to prune as effectively. Place large rocks around the base of newly planted cactus. This will benefit you in 2 ways. The first way is rocks hold heat, which is important. They act like a furnace around the base of the plant, which is important for in the wintertime, especially. The second benefit is if you have mule deer walking through your property, the mule deer will avoid the rocks and walk around the rocks instead of stepping on your tiny little new plant that you just planted. Planting is best done after hard freezes have passed. We are in that time of the year right now. So I had a person call me the other day and they said, is it a good time to plant right now? And I said, absolutely, it is a great time to plant. We may still have some frosty mornings, yes, but that's not going to hurt any of the cactus that you would be purchasing from me because they're outside all winter anyway. So we're past the part of hard freezes. And then don't plant any plants in the ground after September, even though the weather still might be beautiful and warm in October, which it often is. they're going into dormancy at that point in time, so they don't have a chance to establish their roots fully if you plant too late in the season. So if you buy a fully rooted plant, so here's one that's for sale at my house. And they come in a gallon-sized pot. Some have one pad because this pad is big. Some have multiple pads, etc. But when you go to plant, take a look at the diameter of the pot. You're going to dig a hole the same diameter and the same depth. So the same soil depth. Since if you buy from me, most of what's in this pot is there's a little bit of potting soil so that the sand that is predominantly what's in the pot won't just drain out the bottom holes. So it holds it in place. So you're going to tap it gently to loosen all of it. You're going to dump it out onto the ground right next to the hole. And you're going to use a trowel or your hemostats. You'll gently tip it into the hole and then fill in with sand or native soil. You don't need to put potting soil or anything in there into the hole. You're not going to tamp it down. Like if you're planting a tomato plant, you want to tamp that down. A cactus, you don't tamp it down. You'll just dump it into the hole, backfill around it, put your rocks around it, and then leave it sit for 1 to 2 weeks. Don't water it unless rain happens, but don't purposely water it for that long. Why? It's because those really fine roots that we saw earlier in the presentation often get broken during the transplanting process. They're very fine and they break easily. If they're watered heavily, though, that can introduce bacteria into those broken roots, which can lead to root rot. So don't water it. Just leave it sit there for 1 to 2 weeks, and then you can start watering as normal. After cuttings of pads or segments have calloused, if you're going to take a cutting, back up here. If you're going to take a cutting of a plant, we're going to let the cutting or the part that you cut off of another plant heal or callus over before you plant it in any soil. Why? Again, if you plant it too soon and it gets wet, you can introduce rot into the plant, which will kill your plant. So let it callus over, let it dry out. It only takes about, if it's a hot summer, hot time of the year, it'll only take maybe 4 to 5 days. That's all. And then you can insert it into the soil about 3/4 of an inch in depth. If planting upright, use rocks around the base to support it while it's rooting. The roots of a prickly pear will begin to grow within 2 weeks. So it does not take long at all. Cacti are plants that absolutely do not want to die. So you really have to work at killing a plant, a cactus plant. The roots of a cholla will begin to grow within a month. They take a little longer on a cholla versus a prickly pear. Flowers, fruit, and pruning. Cacti in growing zones 4 through 6 typically bloom anywhere from April through July. Sometimes, depending upon the kind of cactus that I have, like the one shown here in the picture, which is called a Mesa Sky, it will bloom clear into September. So if you keep watering them well during the summer, you might be surprised with a second or third flush of flowers. After flowering, the dead flowers will fall off, leaving the fruit or the seed pod attached. So you can see here in the picture, and here's a flowering or a blooming one versus one that has already bloomed. Notice the color difference between the yellow and now it looks almost pink. That happens often with yellow flowering cactus flowers, is the old flowers will turn kind of a pink color. This is the seed pod now at the base. This old flower will just fall off eventually after it dries out. Fruits on some prickly pear will become dry and spiny. Notice the color. It's all turned tan. These are not good to eat. There's nothing in them but seeds. And you can see I've broken open one of them and you can see the seeds that have come out. If you want to plant seeds and grow cactus from seed, you can do that. But it's much faster just to cut a pad off of a plant and grow it that way. Some prickly pear will produce red fruits. These red juicy fruits also have seeds in them, but they'll be black seeds, and I'll show you that in a minute here. These are good for making into syrups, jams, and jellies because they're really sweet. So this is a cut open fruit. You can see the black seeds inside and the red pulp that are in there. And then you can turn them into, like I said, syrups. We make our own syrup from our own plants. I've done jellies and liqueurs, etc. So all kinds of fun stuff you can do with the red juicy fruits. Some fruits taste like strawberry. Some taste more like a watermelon. Each one tastes just slightly different from each other. So when I typically make something with the fruit, I try to mix all the different kinds of varieties together, and it makes a more rounded, yummy syrup. Cholla flowers behave in a similar fashion. However, they turn yellow when they're starting to ripen, and eventually they'll go tan and they will drop off. However, you don't eat anything from a cholla. It's not worth it. It's not something that's good. It's not tasty or anything like that. The fruits will ripen and turn tan 1 to 2 years later. So instead of dropping off immediately, they hang on. But I'll give you a little hint. Each year, each spring, early spring, like in February into early March, I go out and I pick all the cholla fruit off because I find the plant flowers more readily each year if I remove the fruits from them. Pruning a prickly pear. Use a sharp, clean, serrated knife. This shows you the skeleton left behind when a prickly pear pad dies and decomposes. You can see what were the veins that ran through the pad here. That is very, very easy to cut with a serrated knife. Slice it at the joint of the pad. You can see here where my knife is. And I'm using my hemostats here to hold on to the pad. So I just slice through with my knife and take off the pad. When you prune a cholla, this is what a skeleton of a cholla looks like. It's very, very woody. You can't cut it with a knife. You have to use pruning loppers in order to cut that. Again, this shows you my loppers. I get right down at the base of the part that I'm going to cut off here, and I just chop it off. This concludes our presentation at this point, and now we'll open it up for questions.
Hi, I'm Marilyn again, and we have a few questions here. I think we probably
Sure.
have a lot more, but Julie's presentation was very thorough, so this is going to be quick, although I have a few of my own. Here's a question from Sherry. Do sage rats and or voles eat the cactus roots?
I have never had that happen, ever. And
That's
we have
interesting.
lots. We have lots of voles, and we also have lots of sage rats.
All right, Rocky.
Hey, Kim wants to know, when do you prune the cacti? And if you have a piece that has rot, should you rid it off even in the winter?
Yes. Take it off in the winter, even though, just like I showed on that one slide where the pad had turned black, I went ahead and cut that off, and it was midwinter when I did that. Pruning otherwise, you can prune any time of the year you would prefer. However, when you prune, try to pick days where we're not going to have a lot of rain, because again, you don't want to introduce moisture into the fresh cut.
Great, thank you. So here's another question from Otter. Do
Okay.
any cactus grow in broken shade of ponderosa and or juniper?
Good question. I'm glad you brought that up. I prefer not to plant under any juniper trees, especially because juniper trees produce a tremendous amount of duff on the ground. And what happens is that duff can get very deep. The cactus will continue to grow through the duff, but the duff becomes very deep and it prevents enough water from getting to the cactus itself.
Great.
That-
What is the mature size of a prickly pear?
That's a good question. Depends upon the type of prickly pear it is and how its growth habit looks. So some prickly pear that I have grow in I'm using my hands here to visualize. So maybe 2.5 feet across is all. They're very compact, where others can sprawl out for 6, 10 feet, etc. So again, by pruning, that will help control some of that so it doesn't become so big and unwieldy for you to manage.
Thank you. So we have another question.
Sure.
I hope I can pronounce it correctly. Do ocotillo grow here? I believe those are mostly down in Arizona.
Ocotillo. Uh-huh.
Ocotillo. Okay.
Ocotillo. They will not survive our winters here. I have an ocotillo plant, but it is in a large pot and it stays out. It's actually leafed out right now. So it's been outside for a while, but I will have to bring it back in usually mid-October or when we first have the first significant freeze of the year. Yeah.
So what do you mean by significant freeze? What temperature can it
So,
withstand?
so I would say, I mean, I know in Arizona, like if we have our condo in Tucson, it has gotten down to 17 degrees there. So obviously they can survive that, but that it only stays that temperature for such a short amount of time. Where here in Central Oregon, we can stay at 17 for days, you know?
Yes.
So a significant freeze for our climate, our hemisphere, where we are in the hemisphere here, I'd say 28 would be your cutoff point, temperature-wise, overnight.
Thank you.
I just looked up the zone for an ocotillo. It's 8 to 11.
Yeah, yeah. So it's a lot
So
warmer.
it's not gonna tolerate that
No,
cold temperatures that we
It
have.
won't tolerate cold for long periods of time. No, it won't.
Right. Janet wants to know, when she plants small cacti seedlings, how many seasons will it take for it to bloom?
If you're planting a seedling, or I guess I need a little bit more information. I'm thinking if you get a plant, if you plant a new plant this year and it's fully rooted, you should get blooms this year.
Wow.
So it doesn't take long at all. I've brought back cuttings from down south that actually bloomed the same year I brought the cutting back.
That's
Nice.
great news.
Yes.
Nice.
So I have a question from Patty, and she asked, which cacti bloom in which colors? I just want to plan for color. I suppose she needs to plan a visit.
She does. Also, a good thing is to go onto our website, and in the menu, you can pick what color range you want, and then you can look at the plant and the color of the flower. So it's all on there. Um, so like if you came out and selected cacti from me, I could say, okay, you want a range of colors. So let's pick you out some yellows and some oranges and some reds and some pinks, etc. We can do that so that you get a nice range of color. And when I plant in my own garden, I'm always spreading out my colors so that I don't have all the yellows in one spot or all the oranges in one spot, etc.
Great.
Sense. If Sherry wants to know, if an established cactus needs to be moved, is there a best method or time of year?
To move a cactus, you can start doing it this time of year. And I would try to finish it before July, before July. The reason being is when you go to transplant an entire cactus plant, you are going to destroy a lot of their root system. There's just no way around it. So after you've dug it out of the ground, you're going to just let it sit in a shaded area. You don't want to let it sit in the direct sun. Weird thing about cactus is if you cut something up, or if you have taken cuttings, etc., don't just leave them lay out in the direct sun. They'll sunburn. Of all things, that will happen. So when you dig them up, which I've done to move them to a different location, then I move it underneath the juniper for just that short period of time, for about a week, let the roots heal, and then you can put it in the new location. And then you don't water for 1 to 2 weeks again, just like before.
All right. Thank you.
Mhm.
So Patty has a question. I have a
Okay.
lot of dogs in my neighborhood. Does
Uh-huh.
their urine cause problems to the cactus?
No, because they won't pee on them.
Really?
They won't. Chances are they might touch something, and so they'll still steer clear. We've had dogs for years. They steer clear of the cactus. They don't, one poke in the nose, one poke on the bottom side of themselves, their body or whatever. They won't go near them.
Smart.
Yeah,
Yeah.
very smart.
Pat wants to know, how do you identify cactus types, and is there a reference?
There are references. Um, cactus types for our area here in Central Oregon are the types that I mentioned at the beginning of this presentation. Those are the ones that are proven for their cold hardiness. And you can look up in various books. I can give references if you need to. If you give me a call or whatever, I can tell you which books, because there's a number of different books. There's ones that cover Arizona. There's ones that cover California and Nevada. There's, et cetera. So there's different references, and there's one that's going to be coming out hopefully this year that's going to cover Utah, which would be great.
Excellent.
Yeah.
Julie, if I may
Yes.
interject for a quick second.
Yes.
Okay. Will you put those references together for us? Because at the
I
end of
can.
the webinar, we pull together the recording and all of your resources, and we
Okay.
email that to all the participants. So that
I
would
can
be
do that.
wonderful. Okay.
I can do
Excellent.
that. Not a problem.
Thank you.
Yeah. Uh-huh.
Especially if there's something for Oregon, because I've looked and I haven't found
There
much.
is, there is not a reference book for
Yeah.
Oregon. Yeah.
It's
There
very
are only,
disappointing.
there are only 3 types of cactus that grow in Oregon natively. So, yeah.
All
That-
right, so we have
That's one
another
of the
question.
questions that's over here is, are there any
Oh.
cactus native to Central Oregon?
There's none native to Central Oregon proper. I'll put it that way. So we have the fragilis, which grows over by Painted Hills, the Sutton Mountain area. Those are very tiny, tiny prickly pear whose pads are only about 1.5 inches long. They're very spiny, and ranchers typically hate them because they're picked up in the animals' fur, etc., as they walk along, cattle, dogs, etc. And they also grow up along the Columbia River area as well. There is the Cactus, which grows in the Painted Hills area. And there is mountain balls, which are up on Steens Mountain in South Central Oregon, or southeastern Oregon. Those are the
So-
only native cactus in Oregon.
So I have to say, I have personally witnessed at Friday Ranch what I thought were hedgehog cactus. That's
Uh-huh.
north of Madras in Rolling Hills.
Those
near
are Cactus. Those are
Okay.
Cactus. Yes.
And
Uh-huh.
I'm sure the rancher did not plant them.
No.
Okay. And then there's also some I've seen on Gray Butte when I hiked up there many years ago.
Okay. All
They're
right.
they're
They're around, yeah, but finding them, if they're not in flower, often you won't even know they're there.
and then you step on them.
Yes, you do. Yeah.
Okay, we have another question from Patty.
Sure.
Are there cacti that do well in pots here?
Yes. You could do hedgehogs in pots, the beehives in pots, and you could do cholla in pots. I would not choose to put a prickly pear in a pot because they like just like in the picture that's on the screen here for me, right? Well, I don't know if it's still on your
Yes.
screen. Okay.
It is.
You can see that the prickly pear like to spread out and they use the ground as support. So if you put them in a pot, they're going to droop and drape all over the outside of the pot because they're looking for something to hold them up. So they don't do so well in a pot.
So I have a question personally.
Sure.
I've had cactus for over 10 years. I have a kind of a west-facing sloped area that's graveled, and I've grown probably 20 cactus of various types. And the first several years, I'd water them every couple weeks, but I have been negligent in that regard. So I have some that appear to be dying out from the center, whereas the exterior newer growth is still alive. So it sounds like from watching this webinar that I should basically cut out the center, remove some of the healthy pads, um, and then replant them after they have a chance to harden off or get
Yeah, callus over. Yeah.
callus over. Yes.
Yeah. Yeah, I've had ones, if you don't do regular pruning, that will tend to happen more so. So, yeah, at that point, I would say just remove what's there and start over.
At first, I didn't realize they were dead because they were kind of light gray to begin with. And once they were dead, they almost looked the same, but they
Yeah.
didn't bloom. And I'm like, okay, that's not good. So I need to go
Well,
and do some work.
what's interesting is though, even though that center looks dead, if there's new growth coming off of that, there's obviously something still alive there.
Okay.
But if you're thinking about aesthetics wise, I would say yank the whole thing out and start over with some fresh pads. And then prune more regularly, and that won't happen as often.
I have been negligent in pruning my cactus. I did not know. No one had a
Yeah,
seminar or,
right,
any way to teach
right.
you all this. And the person that I bought the cactus from died about
Yes,
8 years
yes,
ago. So he was
yeah,
not around to give any advice. So
right, right. Well,
this is very
cactus,
helpful.
if you think about cactus, they're nothing more than a shrub, basically. So think about you prune your shrubs regularly. Cactus need the same attention to keep them looking tip-top in their appearance.
All right. Well, I think we're done with the questions and we've kept
Okay,
it to an hour. That's really good. And
good.
I want to, I think I need to share my screen at this point.
Okay, I will stop mine from sharing
Okay,
here.
thank you. Oh, there it was. So at this point, we want to thank you for attending and thank our presenter here, Julie, for taking the time today to share with us her beautiful photos and her knowledge about the cactus. I was real eager to hear about this one personally because even though I've had the cactus for over 10 years, it's very nice to know more about them. So we want to thank you again. We at the Master Gardeners wish to thank Julie for taking the time to speak and to thank our guests for participating in today's webinar and remind you that your feedback helps us improve our webinars. So please take a moment to complete our short survey. And again, thank you all. So have a very good day.
Great,
Thank
thank
you,
you.
Julie.
Thank you.
Thank you all.
All right.